She is a New York Times best-selling author of 40 books. Her book, The Artist's Way, has been translated into 40 languages and has helped people all over the world unlock their creativity. Her latest, The Listening Path, is on bookshelves now. I got my copy at Collected Works. We are pleased to welcome author, director, and Santa Fean, Julia Cameron.
Good to be here.
Hi, Julia.
Exciting to see some movie people.
Yeah, well,
I'm
yeah,
friends
we're
with
all
Todd.
movie people.
I'm friends with Todd Christensen, whom you may well have met, and he's a delight. I find that when I look at Santa Fe, I keep thinking, oh, I wonder if I could write something that could be filmed here.
God, I hope you do.
Same thing. Yeah. We
We
need to produce some of your stories. I mean, I love the pigeon fancier. Where is your pigeon? Do you have any with you today?
No pigeon with me today.
But you do fancy them.
I fancy pigeons and I fancy owls.
Oh, good.
So we did a production on Zoom of a play I wrote called Love in the DMZ.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very interesting to film the play. It stars my great friend and colleague, Nick Kapustinsky, whom you've met. It's a play in letters, so it really lent itself to Zoom.
Yeah. Zoom's an interesting performance usage. I got a lot of play work over the course of the COVID too. I was fascinated about what you can do on Zoom to improve a play, workshopping it and stuff.
Oh, Jacques, you're muted.
Sorry. Julia, you got your start as a Hollywood writer, and at a certain point, you figured out a way for artists to unlock their creativity using a formula and a method. And through being mindful in these practices, an artist's creative cup can become full. Can you tell us a little bit about how to keep our creative cup full as artists?
Well, I'm going to sound like a fanatic, so brace yourself. I want to talk about a practice called morning pages, which are 3 pages of longhand morning writing about absolutely anything that crosses your mind. They're about anything and everything. And what they do is they train you to miniaturize your sensor, because you'll be writing and you'll hear a little negative voice that says, you're so boring. And you can't write wrong. So you keep writing and you say to the negative voice, thank you for sharing. I think I'll just keep going. And that becomes a portable skill. And I was writing this morning, I'm writing a book on writing. And I found myself talking about that you write morning pages, they miniaturize your sensor, and they train you to write your first thought. And I was writer in residence in film at Northwestern University. And we were surrounded by intellectuals who knew a lot about how to take a movie apart, but didn't know how to create one. And I taught my students, do the morning pages, that'll free you from your censor, and then write 3 pages and no more of screenplay every day. And setting the bar low like that gave people a sense of satisfaction as they worked through each day. So I hope that answers a little bit about how do you keep the creative cup full You keep it full by emptying negative thoughts.
So I'm excited you're writing a book on writing, because I feel like a lot of your books are already books on writing in a way. And in the listening path, you mentioned the 20-minute rule. Do you want to reveal what the 20-minute rule is for us?
Well, people have a tendency to think that in order to write, they have to have a vast swath of time, uninterrupted time. And, none of us get uninterrupted time. We get interrupted time. So I have a friend who says, just try writing 20 minutes. And everybody can find 20 minutes to write. And so you write you sit down to write and you say to yourself, coaxing, okay, sweetheart, you're going to write for 20 minutes. And you start writing. And what happens is that your first thought leads to your second thought, leads to your third thought. And before you know it, the 20 minutes are up and you want to keep writing. So it's a cheap trick that works. I find the part of me that creates is very easily bribed.
Julia, my big question is that you contend that creativity is an authentic spiritual path. I think that's one of my favorite things. I always felt as a artist that I can't define my spiritual path. I find many spiritual paths in my life work good. I appreciate them, but I never thought of myself as a spiritual path that way. But until I read some of your work, that was inspiring.
Well, I think, in olden days, artists would routinely ascribe their creativity to the influence of a higher power, of a guiding force. Like William Blake said, not me, but the Holy Spirit does the work. And Brahms said, straight away the ideas flow into me right from God. And now we're modern, and we have a tendency to want to be intellectual and want to say that our inspiration comes from our own hard work. And what I have found is that our pardon me, excuse me. I guess there's a little juniper in the air. What I have found is that when we are asking for inspiration, we're sort of swinging open an inner door. And that inner door gives us what I call guidance, which is hunches, intuitions, cues, clues. And when we write, we take a step forward and then another step forward. And so we find ourselves sort of generating a spiritual path a step at a time.
Gary, did you want to ask another one? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just trying to pick up on that, the spiritual path a step at a time. I just referencing myself, people always say, well, what's your process for this or that? And, lethargy is probably my biggest process of just contemplating what I'm about to do that's a creative movement and think about it in different ways. I guess daydream it for a number of days, but I never had a structure in terms of writing it down to help me understand that. I guess if I did, and I tried the 3-minute piece today, and of course it was all about you as we're talking to you today, but I did use my 3 pages of work, Julia, but thank you for the day.
Well, I find that when we write these 3 pages, we're led forward. And it's often in a surprising way. I recently wrote a play, and I found myself saying, this was during the pandemic and I was housebound, and I wanted something creative to do. And it came to me that I'd like to try and write a play. I've written 7 plays. And I thought I'd like to try a play, but I'm not sure where I should begin. And this is a frequent question that writers ask me, where do I begin? And I say, begin where you are. And where I was that I could hear songbirds outside my window. So the beginning of the play became, listen, aren't they lovely? And what I found happening was that the songbirds became a motif in the play. And my hero in the play was wheelchair bound. And I had thought at first that he would be bitter about the accident that caused him to be crippled. But what I found was that he took such delight in the musicality of birds that he was tender-hearted, and he became a tender-hearted hero.
Nice. That's wonderful. Now, what do we do with this play? Do you have producers standing by ready to take anything you write and produce it, or do we have to get it up hand and fist?
I think I go through getting it up hand and fist the same as anybody else. And what I have is a website, juliacameronlive.com. And there's a section in it called Julia's Art. And it has plays, musicals, poems, different divisions. And what I found was that I was hungry to express and not hungry to go through the difficulty of trying to convince a theater to do it.
Right.
So I put it up for people to read and use their imagination to form the production.
Well, I'm very much a theater actor at my start and any chance I get. So I went to the website, I signed up, and I pushed the button plays 100 times. We have to fix that part of the website because that was my first interest, were your 7 plays.
Uh-huh.
But I wanted to know that you lived, and of course you wrote this book, or, I'm not sure if that was a book. I think it was God is Dog.
Right.
To talk about that some, but I know that, do you find Santa Fe offers something more than Los Angeles, and Chicago, New York City, and Washington, D.C., all places you've lived?
Well, I think I'm 73 years old, and I've been writing full-time since I was 18. So that's 55 years. And I've lived in many busy cities and tried to, quote, get my art on within the structures of the cities. And what I found was that I had a hunger to express and a hunger uh, to allow people to bring their own creativity to the process. So I think you're my ideal reader.
Yes, for sure.
So another thing that I was curious about is an artist is connecting with their creativity by connecting with their subconscious, according to you. You mentioned Spielberg got his best ideas while driving. And so using walking as a way to let your subconscious take over, and does that let your creativity flow? Is that right? Does walking have a connection to tapping into your subconscious?
I think it does. I think each footfall brings us into the now. And as we walk, we're focused on everything happening around us. Although I sometimes think, you mentioned you've walked with your dog. I find walking with my dog a little distracting because she's like, oh, look at that handsome Rottweiler. Oh, look at that darling Cocker Spaniel. And I am like, Lily, focus. But I think walking again opens an inner door. It opens a door for listening. And I think that as we listen, we're inviting our creativity to participate. And I think hunches come to us, intuitions come to us, insights are, I think, the primary thing that comes to us from walking. We might walk out with a problem, and after walking for 20 minutes, we go, oh, I see what I can do about that. And we have a breakthrough. So I think walking leads to creativity. And I also think creativity leads to walking. That sometimes when I've been focusing on a piece of work for a while, I'll get restless and I'll need to move my body. And I think inspiration comes to a body in motion.
I love
In,
that. Oh, go ahead, Gary.
in 2013, you published The Artist Way for Parents, Raising Creative Children. I haven't had a chance to read that one, but that must have been a very popular book. Everybody wants their child to be special and creative and insightful and a great writer, right? How did that book go over? And that's a great idea. How do you do it?
I think what happened with that book was that it didn't get publicized properly. And it sort of came and went. And I feel like it was a book that was devoted to parents who wanted an easy way for their children to be creative. And the book wasn't too popular because I kept saying things like, don't be afraid of mess.
Let your children.
Well, if you saw my house, that wouldn't be a problem with
You're very creative family.
with my baby. Yeah, we're a creative family, and we're definitely not afraid of mess. I wish maybe sometimes I was a little more afraid of mess.
And that publisher for that book, by the way, was Tarcher Hay House. Now, Tarcher's a very famous publishing house for, mind, body, spirituality. It was a large publisher who took an interest in those categories or subjects, and kind of found your early work and published much of it. Um, but tell us more about raising creative children. We have so many parents, young parents, starting to come to Santa Fe. I wonder, do you have any more accessible tips at the tip of your tongue?
Accessible tips at the tip of my tongue. It seems you're having fun.
Yes.
I think a spirit of play. Don't be afraid of mess. It can get cleaned up. Children love mess. Children love playfulness and appreciation. I have a granddaughter who draws magnificent horses. She's 8 years old. And I said to her, I've got drawings of yours on my refrigerator, but would you do me a new one? And she was visiting here. And she drew a picture of a horse standing in front of mountains. And I was delighted with that. And she is very musical. And I bought her a piano, a keyboard, and she uses it all the time. But when I write music, I use a little toy keyboard, a little 18-key keyboard. And so I found myself thinking, maybe as well as having that serious keyboard, she needs a playful keyboard. So I gave her the playful keyboard, and she uses it to write original music.
So we're talking with author Julia Cameron. Julia, we've spoken about the morning pages and we've spoken about walking, but I think maybe it's a good time for us to bring up the artist date and talk a little bit about what that is.
Well, I think it's a wonderful thing that you're so well versed in my work, because there are 3 basic tools that I try and teach people. The first one is morning pages, 3 pages of longhand morning writing about absolutely anything. The second one is artist dates. And an artist date is something, you asked me if Santa Fe had a leg up on some of the busier cities. And I think it does in terms of artist dates, which are doing something solo, festive, enchanting, playful, where you're coaxing yourself out of your comfort zone and into a new experience. And I think you brought up walking and walking with your dog and walking with a thought in mind of what should I do next? And maybe you want to peek into the yarn store or peek into the Ark, or you're quite familiar with bookstores here, Opposite, Collected Works, Garcia Books, and I buy cards, and it's even the UPS store has cards, and I buy cards and mail them to my far-flung friends, and I find that people are touched that I took the time to write. But that's one of the fruits of an artist's date, is it gives you a playful way to address things. So I had a girlfriend who lived in Florida who kept saying, "We're so far apart. We're so far apart." And I talked to her on the phone every day. And finally, I realized she needs some visuals to be able to picture where I live. So on my artist dates, I started collecting visuals specifically for this friend. And I collected a picture of our cathedral, a picture of our plaza, a picture of a ristra, a wonderful chain of red chilies, a picture of a cactus flower, a picture of a gate, a painted gate in an adobe wall. And I sent these off to her, and she stopped saying, "We're so far apart." And she started saying, "I go on a walk and I see feral cats and I'm taming one of them." And so now she's living in New York with a successfully tamed feral cat named Midnight.
Oh, wow.
Um, oh, I was gonna say I really enjoyed the listening path. I think especially it's like a must read if you're in Santa Fe. Just how you paint Santa Fe, and it's just really really fun. I was actually listening to it as a busy mom. It was a little easier to listen to it on Audible, which has been really fun because it really paints this magnificent picture of Santa Fe. And so one of my big questions, and you kind of just answered that, but is what's one of your favorite artist dates in Santa Fe?
Well, I like to go to the Ark. And it's a spiritual bookstore, which is crammed with minutiae that is enticing to the spiritual path. So you can get incense, you can get caftans, and you can get cards. And I recently bought a card with the Lakota saying on it that perhaps the stars at night are our passed over loved ones, burning bright, shining down on us. And I have a friend named Scott Thomas, who is a Lakota elder and a therapist. And he combines therapeutic technique and Lakota practices. And he gets up in the morning and makes offerings to the ancestors. And then he listens for guidance. And one of my favorite things to do is talk to him every night and hear what were the events of his day. And he takes his dog, he has a pit bull named Piggy. And Piggy is a beautiful dog. And he takes Piggy, who would probably be friends with Ganesh. He takes Piggy to the dog park and lets him play with his friends. So one of my favorite artist dates is going out the door here, turning right onto a dirt road and walking for about a half a mile on the dirt road underneath the juniper trees, past a bevy of songbirds. And I find that the ravens here are very interested by my little dog, Lily. She's not quite big enough to be threatening, and she's very curious. And the ravens will circle overhead, cawing, and Lily will be like, "Let me at him."
Yes, I know Scott's dog very well, Piggy 5, actually. And Scott is a wonderful elder in our community here. Does a lot of work for a lot of people. He's a real special character. Thank you for that. Yeah, one of my, as an actor, people, I have the opportunity or, sometimes the challenge of trying to teach people how to act. And I always end up telling them at some point that 50% of acting is listening. And that always seems to strike them very odd, that, in order to be a good performer, you have to listen. And I think that's the basis of your new book, is that people aren't listening to each other that much anymore. Seems less and less. We give the time, just a few seconds. We listen and we don't hear something that makes absolute sense to us, we just turn our back and move on. But that's a great lesson in that book about listening to people and their stories and their views on life.
Well, what we find is that when we listen to people, they say surprising things. And a lot of times we don't listen. We are ready with what we're going to say next. And so we interrupt. So the process of the listening path is listen to your environment, listen to the tick, tick, tick of the kitchen clock, listen to the rattle of the dog's keys on the water bowl, listen closely, and then listen to others. And what I find, it's interesting, Gary, when you talk about your experience as an actor, you're talking about a process where, in order to have the next line, you can't be waiting to say the next line in a certain way. You have to have the next line be cued by your listening.
Yes.
Well,
and you have to understand that line as they're saying it. You have to make your sense of it to respond. But if you're not listening, then we can tell.
Right. Well, I work with Nick Kapustinsky, who's a wonderful actor, and I find that he listens to me very closely. So when I want to talk about a project, I'll start to say something, and I'll be waiting for Nick to interrupt, and he doesn't interrupt. He leans forward, and that just cues me to think by his body language that he is willing to follow wherever my thoughts may go.
well, that's a show, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, Julia. I think that was just a wonderful, lovely conversation with you. I just loved the listening path, and it's in stores now. One thing I loved about it is just your group of friends in Santa Fe, and writing about walking in Santa Fe and taking different friends for lunch dates. Is there anything you want to say about what makes you such a good friend, or listening and and that corresponding to friendship before we go?
Well, I think I want to say that people think of me as a good listener. And I think that that comes from my doing morning pages, that I put my chattering thoughts on the page, and it clears a space to be filled creatively by the people I encounter.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us. This was best-selling author Julia Cameron.